Well, we are a little bit excited this morning. But let me also express my gratitude to the staff, your staff. First of all, where Gara and Leslie are concerned with our youth ministry and our children's ministry, I want you to understand that I don't look at them, and I know they don't get a lot of recognition at times, but I don't look at them, and I hope you won't look at them like they're some sort of JV staff or something like that. Their roles are some of the most spiritually significant in the church because they are addressing and dealing with and discipling and changing the hearts and the minds of the next generation. And so they deserve a lot of gratitude for that, along with all the people that help make those ministries happen. And so I hope you'll realize that. Tim, he's a different story all his own. It's taken me a while to figure Tim out. But you see what he does on Sunday morning with music and filling in, preaching and things when I'm gone. But there's a lot of things that happens behind that you don't see that I've come to really appreciate in having. In staff meetings, there's probably every week, there's something that comes up that we discuss in staff meetings that needs to be addressed. And it doesn't really fall to Leslie or Gara's, their part of ministry and their purview of ministry, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really fall to them. And Tim will usually say, I'll take care of that. Or he'll say, do you want me to take care of that? Or you want to take care of that? And most times, you take care of that. But here's why that's so important. So many of these things, they're not real time consuming per se. You think it may take 20 minutes, but you may take 20 minutes or an hour or something like that to deal with. But you get enough of those things on your plate and they will drain you. They will time suck your day dry. And so having him take care of that is a big help. And not just that, he handles a bigger part, a much bigger part of the visiting load than I do. Of making sure that people who need visits or think they need visits, whatever the case may be, get visited. Because that's always been an issue that I've had is I don't know, am I supposed to show up for that person or not? Because some people are, I'm going today to have my ingrown toenail taken care of. Why isn't the pastor here praying for me over my ingrown toenail? And some people, they're having 5 bypasses done. I show up to go visit them. Why are you here? You got more important things to do. I got friends. I got other people. I'm fine. You go do what you need to do. Leave me alone. And so it's just hard for me to know where I need to be, but he helps carry that load in that way. But also in other things that are time consuming. For example, the marriage seminar we had last year, the parenting seminar is coming up in a few months. We talk about those things at staff meeting. We talked about the who, what, when, and where. But then after that, and I don't know if I should say this or not, but I don't mind saying this, I don't do anything. He takes care of that, or he and Leslie, they just take care of all that stuff. I don't have to do a thing. And that may seem like, well, Randy, shouldn't you be doing it? No, it's a great blessing to have that taken care of in that area. So what I've come to think Tim of, he's like the keeper of the spring. And that's an old parable, an old story about a guy who always up in the mountains taking care of the little creeks that lead into the little river that flows through town and keeping them clean and keeping all the debris out of them. And so it's nice and pretty always. It flows through town. Then somebody says, what does this guy do? We pay him as keeper of the spring. What does he do? I don't even know who he is. Don't even see him. And so, well, let's just do away with them. Money's tight. Let's just cut that out. And for the first couple of months, they don't know anything. But then pretty soon, all that stuff starts clogging up in their streams and things get dirty and smelly and stinky. Then they go, oh, we made a big mistake. And so for me, he's kind of that person that you don't really see a whole lot what's going on in that. But you go without it and you will notice it, in a few months later. And plus, the really thing, one more Sorry to spend all this time on Tim, but just got to say this. One thing I really appreciate about Tim is that there's no egos involved in ministry. You know, he does a lot of funerals and things like that also. He's very willing to take the lead in doing a lot of funerals and that we have here because he has a relationship with the people that I don't have. And so they naturally go to him. And there's no egos between us, between who does what and who around here. I appreciate that. I especially appreciate that whenever things happen, like when this one team from Louisiana beats up on this other team from Arkansas. And basically, like what happened last night, for example. The Tigers just enjoy eating roast pork. He takes it like a man. Unlike some Cowboy fans that I know of in the church. All right, I better quit. And then there's Sam. Sam is the glue that holds it all together. Okay? He's got this quiet, humble, but spiritual side about him. And I discovered, you know, he's the one, although sometimes we don't recognize it as a staff, sometimes the church may not recognize it, but he's the one that kind of holds everything together and is able to come in and say, well, what I think's going on or what I believe, and what do you go, yeah, I think he's right, you know, and he has a way to do that, to be involved in each of our lives as staff and just helps sort of glue everything together. So I am appreciative. I just want you to know that I'm appreciative of your staff. All right. So thank you for the recognition, and from them, thank you also. So here we go. There's this girl, 8-year-old girl, runs outside. Daddy, Daddy, what's sex? And her dad starts panicking. Oh, no. I knew this day was coming. Didn't expect it now. What do I do? What do I say? Well, she asked, so he just starts blurting things out. Her eyes get real big. He goes, what's the matter, sweetheart? She goes, Daddy, I don't know. Mama just told me to come outside and tell you the dinner will be ready in a couple of secs. So, I know this subject is awkward. It doesn't matter how you approach it. It is awkward. But it shouldn't be. Shouldn't be any awkwardness. There shouldn't be any embarrassment. It shouldn't be any shame. God created it. It's His idea. We shouldn't be ashamed, embarrassed, or even feel awkward about talking about something that He created. He created us, men and women, as sexual beings. And after He created us, one of the first things He says, His first command, be fruitful and multiply. Okay. Do you guys understand what I just said? Let me restate it for you in language I hope you can understand. Here's man and woman in the garden before any sin, completely naked, and He tells them, go make love. I thought that'd get at least one amen, but not even that. So it's God's idea. He created it. He knows everything about it. He knows every aspect about our sexuality because He created it. Now, here's what I need you to imagine. Kind of keep this in your head throughout the sermon. Here's a line going across here. And on this end of the line is a very bad sexual experience. One in which it destroys a person. Not only that, it destroys the people around them. It winds up destroying relationships. It winds up destroying marriages. It's a very bad sexual relationship, a sexual way of expressing yourself. It's just bad. There's hurt, there's pain, there's destruction all around it. Now, on the other end of this line is a great sexual experience. One in which bonds a husband and wife together. One in which results in great joy. One in which glorifies God. One in which there's fulfillment. because it touches the man and the woman in such an intimate way that they can hard to express, but it just takes them and they become that one flesh. Now, between this great sexual experience and this terrible sexual experience, where do you think God wants us? But the issue today is that porn has come along in our culture, and it's pushing everybody over here to a place that's going to destroy them, destroy the people around them, and gives the idea, gives the appearance of this is going to lead to pleasure, this is going to be great, but it winds up doing nothing but completely destroying the person. Now, when I bring up the idea of porn, a lot of the older guys say, yep, when I was a kid, I found, or my friend found, their father's Playboy, and we looked at it. And that's their idea of porn. But the internet is a game changer. The internet now has provided instant accessibility. In Proverbs, it talks about the guy who goes out of his house, goes through town, comes around the corner, and finds a prostitute, and she lures him to her place for supposedly a night of pleasure, but the proverb, the Solomon says, is a night of just total decay and total annihilation, of slaughter, not a pleasure. But what the internet has done is brought that prostitute into our homes. We don't even have to go anywhere. There, right on the computer, just one little click is all it takes. And there she is. Maybe it's on a webcam. Maybe it's a chat back and forth. Maybe it's just pictures or videos. But there she is, ready to do anything. As a result, in our culture right now, we have men, supposedly what looks like godly men, in our churches, in our ministries, heading up things that are drowning in this, drowning in it. The destruction it's everywhere. And according to the stats, a lot of women are in the same boat too. 90% of kids ages 8 to 16 have viewed pornography online. The average age of exposure, some say 8, some say 10, it varies a little bit. The largest demographic that's consumers of pornography are kids ages 12 to 17 years old. If you find a guy 40 years old or younger who has not been and is not currently into porn to some degree, you have found a rare thing. You have found not just a 1%er, you found a 1%er of the 1%ers. It's that pervasive. It's everywhere. And it's a silent killer in our churches. And we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to say anything. When's the last time you were in your small group and you say, what's on the prayer request? And the guy says, well, pray for me. I stayed up all night. I'm really out of it because I was up all night viewing cyber porn. Okay, next prayer request? Oh, you never heard that go on, have you? So we're going to talk about this week and next week. And it may not be easy for you to hear. In some ways, it's not easy for me to talk about. And it's not, when I say it's not easy for me to talk about, it's not because of the subject. That's not it at all. The problem I have is I'm talking to men and women about a subject that is very different among men and women. That's the hard part for me. Because men and women, they're just different. We all know that. but they are really different in so many aspects. One list puts it this way, in their approach to shopping, women see shopping as an adventure. Men see it as a task. Do I have to go? I don't want to. Don't make me go. Men get their self-esteem through achievement. Women get their self-esteem through relationships. I mean, even a pile of clothes. How do you know it's dirty or not? A woman will look at it to tell if it's dirty. A man will smell it. All right? And you'll never see a man wear another man's clothes. Can I wear that shirt next week? No, it'll never happen. And you've never seen a man get up and go to the bathroom and say, hey, to his friend, his guy friend, you want to come go to the bathroom with me? Never happened. And you will never see a woman clean her ear with a car key, at least not in public. A man doesn't care if it's in public or not. And so when they get married, all these differences come to light. And it makes marriage very hard. Women find out that men are pretty sloppy and insensitive. Men find out that women are very complex and super, super hard to please. It's like one comedian said, men marrying men, the cowards, you know. But there's a big difference. There's a big difference where porn comes into play in this. Because men and women process visual images differently. Very differently. A woman sees a picture of an attractive man or sees an attractive man, that image goes to the front part of her brain. And it just sits there. Doesn't really do much. I talked to the women in my Sunday school class today about this. You know, what happens when you see an attractive guy? And you go, oh, just an attractive guy. Wow, that's nice. You know, and it just goes on. Then just go on with their day or whatever they're doing. But when a man sees an attractive woman, that image does not go to the front part of his brain. It goes to the back part of his brain. And things begin to light up. And it's the same part of the brain that lights up when a man is starving and he goes into a room and there's a big buffet lined out. Ooh, I got to eat, got to have it. He just consumes it. That's why men are sexual predators. That's why this Me Too movement, and before that, men get sued and sometimes lose their job over sexual harassment. I mean, you look at the news, you know, we've seen all these news anchors just drop like flies and people all in our culture just going down and going in because of sexual harassment. Me Too movement didn't say, oh, all these women, they're sexually harassing these guys. Now, I'm sure that happens at some point, but you just don't see much of it at all. Why? Because we process things differently. Now, why did God create us like that? Why did God create man to have that visual images just so ignite that back part of his brain and him be so just encapsulated by that? Well, for one big reason is because that is supposed to bond him to his wife. See, the only images that he's supposed to see like that is images of his wife. And it bonds him. I got to have her. I want her. You ever see a man just keeps that image of his wife? It's just like, it's hard then to, you know, it's got to touch her, got to hold her close, got to keep it because he's got to have it. And here's, with what I just said, often can be interpreted the wrong way. So, Randy, what you just told me is that that's just the way God made me like that. So what choice do I have? Because you get bombarded by those images all day long. They're everywhere. But you choose what you do with that thought. You're held accountable with what you do with that thought. You should, and you should be taught, and you should learn how to handle those temptations. But here's where it goes. Well, I'm just here beyond my computer. There's nobody getting pregnant. There's no disease involved. I'm just here on my computer. And I'm sitting here and I may be typing away, talking back and forth with Jane on my computer. Or it may not be Jane. It could be Joe for all we know. It could be a 18-year-old girl or an 88-year-old man. Who knows what's on the other end of that computer? But the idea of it's okay, it does not do me any harm. It's just here on the computer. You may think that you found a technical loophole in this, but you have not, because anything that takes your mind, your emotions away from this, how God created it, and starts pushing you to go this way, that's dangerous. It's so dangerous that here's what Paul says in Ephesians 5, verse 3. But sexual immorality and any impurity or greed should not even be heard among you, as is proper for the saints. Should not even be heard. I like the way the NIV puts it. Not even a hint of it. Not even just a little bit. Immorality. Porneo is the Greek word. Of course, we know we get pornography from that. It's just talking about any sexual activity outside of marriage, outside between a man and a woman in marriage. He said there shouldn't be any of that. Not even extramarital sexual arousal. Not even reading that article on 41 ways to drive your boyfriend crazy in bed. None. And parents, you need to watch out for this for your kids. Don't let them be reading things and listening to things that's going to have them flirt with this over here, this terrible sexual experience, and take them away from what God intends. Don't let that happen. Don't let them listen to, I don't know, Snoop Dogg or Eminem or anything like that. And whatever you do, don't give them unaccountable computer time. And here's what they're going to say. Don't you trust me? What are you going to say back? Let's practice this. What are you going to say? No, I don't trust you. If you have problems with that, say, Pastor Randy told me not to trust you. It gets worse. Because see, our whole culture is pushing people over here, right, toward this terrible sexual experience. Here's what we read a verse later. For know and recognize this, every sexual, immoral, or impure, or greedy person who is an idolater does not have an inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God. Let no one deceive you with empty arguments, for God's wrath is coming on the disobedient because of these things. You think it's no big deal? You think it's just a couple of pictures? You think no harm, no foul? I'm not doing anything right now? Oh, God sees it differently. Why? His wrath is coming on these people. Last week we saw in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 where God's vengeance is against people who will live that immoral lifestyle, who will walk over here. Why? You're taking something that God created to glorify Him, to help you become a man and a woman who's bonded together, to be a picture of Christ in the church, something that's holy and pure, and you want to trash it and make it into this, something that kills you and kills the people around you relationally, spiritually, and in every other way? You take something that God put so much intent in creating, and you want to make light of that? Oh. Talk about thumbing your nose up at the majesty and the beauty, the ultimate of God's creation. You know, we look and we see, oh, man and woman, that's the crown of His creation, creating man. But sex is the crown creation of His crown creation. And you want to dirty, filthy that up? Not only that, but we go back to what He said before in the prior verse. Any sexual, immoral, impure, or greedy person who is an, what's that word? Idolater. And you say, how does that make me an idolater? You're worshiping the God of pleasure. It puts you into that category. And so you get involved in pornography, Do not tell me that you're okay with God. Yeah, you got this little thing going on, but me and God, he's okay with it. No, you're deceiving yourself. You think you can sit in here in this church and have this habit going on in your life and you're okay with God? Oh, but I'm intending to quit. You know what? It's not much. It's just a little. You're deceiving yourself. You don't take something so precious to God and what he has put such intent in creating that's meant to do what it does in us and trash it and make it into something over here that's ugly, that just destroys a person, destroys their family, destroys those around him. Make it to something without any consequences. Circular research, that means pastor didn't do this. Jennings Bryant, he is a guy's professor of the University of Alabama, and I don't like even saying that word, but I said it, okay, of Alabama. And he did a study on people who have repeated exposures to pornography. And a couple of things came out of that. He said people who basically view pornography have a deceased satisfaction with one's own sexual partner. They don't have that much of a desire for their wives and for their husbands. It works this way in women too. Women, I know a few years ago, I don't know exactly what it is now. A few years ago, like 28% of people viewing porn sites were women, and now it's up higher. I think it's somewhere around like 34. I'm not sure, but I know it's in the lower 30s now. So it works this way for women too, where they just don't find it much satisfaction with sex with their partner. To the point where I've dealt with a couple of guys who did not want to have sex with their wives, who had good-looking wives. But porn had so destroyed them, messed them up so bad, that coming and having something the way God intended it is not even in their ability anymore. Secondly, he said there's a decrease in the value of faithfulness. Everybody now wants sex without attachments. Back 15 or so years ago, the term was friends with benefits. Friends who we're just friends with, but we do sexual things together. And I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, it was, let's watch Netflix and chill. That was the term they used. I don't know what the terms are. They change that so often. But what this does scientifically, so not only does it decrease your desire for your mate, not only does it increase or decreases faithfulness, where you want just sex that has no consequences to it wherever you can find it. But what it does scientifically, how it changes your neural pathways. We talked about this a little bit when we were talking about mental health, how your brain creates these neural pathways. In other words, what you think a thought, it's a lot easier to think that thought again. And most of these pathways in our minds, they're like little trails that we're just used to walking down. But when a guy looks at porn, it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long. Sometimes just an hour or maybe just a couple hours or a couple of days, and it just doesn't take long at all. And he doesn't create a pathway. He creates an 8-lane superhighway through his mind. Think of it like this. Those who live around here, think of 1844 being an 8-lane expressway. Or if you go up and down 300 being an 8-lane expressway, where every time you go through your day, whether you go in the store, going to work, going to school, you have to deal with that 8-lane expressway. That's what it does. And what that means is everything they do during the day is done in light of that 8-lane expressway. They could be going to work, and as they're going to work or go to work, and just the thoughts are there, or just see a woman, any woman, it doesn't matter. Their mind just goes there. And so they learn that a real woman isn't good enough. One woman isn't good enough. Their wife isn't good enough. Nothing satisfies. And if you think, oh, I'm going to get married. Once I get married, I won't have any more trouble with porn. Oh, no. Like I said, you will find even the desire for your spouse, it just goes away. Another thing is that men will begin to treat women like a piece of meat. If you think you can treat a woman like a piece of meat and put on tux and get married and everything's going to be fine after that, you're wrong. Here's what God wants. Husbands, in the same way, live with your wives in an understanding way as with a weaker partner, showing them honor as co-heirs of grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. What does God want? He wants us to show them honor. He wants us to be able to treat them the way they should be treated. Nothing over here even approaches that. Everything over here wants to treat them like a piece of meat. You go back, you look through history, wherever there's been genocide going on or slavery going on, and you'll find this group of people decide to take this group of people and dehumanize them, to treat them like they weren't even worth being called a human anymore. The Nazis did this with the Jews, right? They're just cockroaches. They're just rats. So they could kill them and treat them like that. We did the same thing in our country concerning slavery and Indians. They're not even human. And that's what porn does. You begin to treat that woman like a piece of meat, just to be used and discarded. And guess what? Women begin to think to themselves, I'm just a piece of meat. I'm just to be used and be discarded. Here's what we read in 1 Corinthians 6:12. Everything is permissible for me, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. Mastered, controlled, addicted to. That's what porn does. It masters you, controls you. You become addicted to it. Think of it like somebody has an eating disorder. And they make this plate of food, and they know they shouldn't eat it. They know they just had another plate of food. They made another plate of food, got all this stuff, and they know they shouldn't be eating it. Even as they're putting it in their mouth, I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't be doing this. Why? Because it controls them. Same way with other addictions. Nobody's going to wake up in the morning and say, oh, man, I think I'll become an alcoholic today. I think I'm going to start getting me a drink, and I'll drink something else at noon, drink something else at night, and start drinking more and more alcohol, where I'll become an alcoholic. I'll lose my job. I'll lose my family. This is going to be great. I can't wait to get started drinking. Nobody thinks like that. Nobody says, boy, I'm just going to smoke a cigarette today, and I think I'm going to try and work up till I'm a 2-pack a day or maybe a 4-pack a day smoker, so I'll get lung cancer when I'm 45. I'll die by the time I'm 52. Won't see my grandkids anymore. Where's that cigarette? I just got to get started and just get on this road and do this. No, people don't think that way. Or how about gambling? Oh, I'm just going to place a little bet here, but maybe one day I'll just get so much into gambling, it'll have me, I'll lose my home, I'll start sleeping underneath a bridge, and just looking so forward to that, losing everything. Nobody plans that, but it happens all the time. People say, I can quit at any time. Yeah, right. Prove that. Prove that. So what has mastered you? What I'm trying to paint a picture of you is, Our culture is pushing everybody this way, this terrible sexual experience. And you let that happen, you will not be able to have a marriage as you would like. You will not be able to be in a relationship with anybody as you would like. It will affect everything else in your life. And there will be nothing but destruction in your life and in the lives around you. You don't want to go here. What do you want to do? Remember how we talked about how culture pushes us to this edge when we started this series? So we have a whole culture living on this edge in this area. A lot of people, they've fallen off. They're down there. They don't even realize they're down there, but they're down there. They done messed up everything. What I want you to do is to come back from that place where you're at and, again, build that wall. Remember we talked about that wall, that standard of behavior, that conviction that's so strong that your conscience will not let you violate that. That's where you need to go. You need to be headed over here where you're going to treat women with the respect as fellow heirs of Christ. And let me just say this to you young guys around here, that do you realize that there are so few of you that would treat a woman as a fellow heir of Christ, not as a piece of meat? There's so few of you out there that women today wonder if a guy like that even exists. Now listen close. You become a guy like that who treats a woman without looking at her like she's a piece of meat, but as a fellow heir of Christ, that will make you a very small group of a very desirable male. Maybe I'm not being clear enough. You'll have women knocking on your door saying, I would love to go out with you someday if you're available. Now, I know I'm exaggerating some, but women, they don't even know if there's a guy like that exists. See, here's what I always tell you. Become the person that the person you're looking for is looking for. Become the person that the person you're looking for is looking for. Because I promise you, those guys that want that woman that's going to do anything at any time, just like that one on the internet, that's not really the woman he wants to marry. Become the person that the person you're looking for is looking for. What do you want, guys? You want a woman who honors Christ. You want a woman who is just for you. You want a woman who, boy, when you get alone in the bedroom, that sex, that's as God intended it, is joyful. It's everything that God wanted it to be. It binds you together. That's what you want. So become the person that the person you're looking for is looking for. So build this wall. How do you build this wall up? You've heard that it was said, do not commit adultery, but I tell you, everyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. Throw it away. For it's better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And then he goes on and says the same thing about your hand. So how do you become a guy that builds a wall? You just take a spoon and gouge your eye out. No, then you still have one eye, right? You can still lust with one eye. What's Jesus saying? He's saying, you do whatever's necessary to get you over here. If you got to get rid of your computer, you do it. If you got to get rid of the TV, you do it. If you got to change jobs, you do it. You do whatever it takes to keep you away from that. Told you before about the guy, and I'm not sure what context, but I know I mentioned it before about Aaron Rolston. He was this hiker. He was an avid mountaineer type guy, climbing all sorts of things, and a hiker too. So he finds himself in Utah, in this canyon in Utah. And the canyon has all these crevices in it. I haven't been there, but I've seen pictures of it and just learning more about him and his story. But imagine these little odds as crevices, because I see them in glaciers all the time. They look like sort of like crevices in glaciers. But it may not be but 5 or 6 feet wide, or maybe even just 3 feet wide, goes down about 30 or 40 feet. And he would get one of these and hike along it. And he was doing that, and he was climbing up the other end of it. And as he did, this boulder falls, 1,000-pound boulder falls on his hand and traps him there. Now, he's got a problem. Because one, he can't move. And now he's way back into this wilderness area in Utah. And he can make all the racket he wants. It's going to bounce all those walls, just go straight up and dissipate. Nobody's going to hear him. After 5 days, and now he's run out of his water, he decides, I've got to do something. He breaks both his bones right here, takes out his knife, cuts away the skin and the tendons, makes a homemade little tourniquet, puts that on out of a straw or something that he had, makes a tourniquet out of a straw that he had, and then cuts the blood vessels, then turns and goes back and hikes back up out of there and hikes like 8 miles to his truck. Now, if a guy is willing to do that, to live a couple more years on earth, what should you be willing to do? Not to see this over here become your lifestyle, this terrible sexual experience. What would you be willing to do, knowing it could affect not just your life here, but your all eternity? What would you be willing to do? What would you be willing to do to have this the way God designed it and to not go the way the rest of the culture goes? So we read this. Colossians 3:5, therefore, put to death what belongs to your earthly nature, sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desire, and greed, which is idolatry. Sort of the same thing he says in Ephesians. This is idolatry, this greed. Do whatever you have to get rid of it. One of my favorite guys, and this is another one, and I intend to do this all the time, but I know I'll share part of this story with you at some point. Timothy Treadwell, he's a guy that for 13 years comes up in the summers in Alaska and hang around bears. Get close to them. Scary close. And I knew, and everybody else knew in Alaska, what was going to happen sooner or later. I remember preaching a sermon, I used that as an illustration. I said, one day. And so what he did later in the season, and this is important, because bears, you know, they're feeding, but when it starts to cool off, and you know that fall's coming, and falls are, in Alaska, is a very short season. When that's coming, bears know that's coming, they begin just to eat everything. And so he and his girlfriend camp out along a bear trail that goes to a salmon stream. And so a bear comes along and he just eats them. They killed what they thought was the right bear and opened up his stomach. And sure enough, there's human remains, human clothing, everything else in the bear's stomach. And everybody goes, how'd that happen? It's a bear who has this DNA that this time of year, he wants to eat anything. Now, sure, he went a long time and hanging around bears and nothing happened. But it's kind of like this. You put a burrito in front of me, I may not want that burrito. I'm eating salmon, eating something else. Next day, I still may not want that burrito. But sooner or later, I'm going to eat that burrito. It is in the DNA of sin to kill you and destroy you. It wants to create this in your life, this terrible sexual experience. And you want to play around with that? No. What does Paul say to do to it? Put to death. Kill it. So, if we use the analogy that porn in your life is like a bear what do? You kill it. You take out your weapon of choice. Bear spray? No. Not bear spray. All the tourists want to come up and get bear spray. Yeah, you got a bear coming. That bear spray, no. You need something. My weapon of choice, 44 Magnum with 300 grain solid core bullets. Because I know it's not going to hit something hard and spread apart. It's going right through it. And you take that and you boom, and you let it have it. I don't know if you ever heard, I've been on a gun range, and they're all shooting their little pistols. They're 9, 10 millimeters and whatever. Pow, 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 pow. And you tank that baby off. Boom! Everybody knows what you got. And you take that and you shoot that and you shoot it again and again. It falls down and it's still trying to have another breath. You walk in and you let it have it. You kill it. Because here's what people think. Oh, this will be like cigarettes. I'm a 4-pack-a-day smoker. I'm going to slowly cut down to a 2-pack-a-day smoker. And then over a couple months, I'll go down to just maybe 2 cigarettes a day. No. There's no stepping down from this. You got to kill it. You got to let it, just do away with it. It's not something that you play with. You kill it. So here's what you need to do. You back away and you build this wall. This conviction is so strong, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to be involved in anything that pushes me in that direction. You get rid of it. You kill it. And then you learn what it means to be holy. Here's what we read in Leviticus. For I am the Lord your God, and so you must consecrate yourselves and be holy because I am holy. Do not defile yourselves by any swarming creature that crawls on the ground. For I am the Lord who brought you up from the land of Egypt to be your God, so you must be holy because I am holy. This is the law concerning animals, birds, all living creatures that move in the water, all the creatures that swarm on the ground, in order to distinguish between the clean and the unclean. There's an important phrase right there. In order to distinguish between the clean and the unclean, between the animals that may be eaten and those who may not be eaten. So what's he saying? You want to be holy as I am holy? You want to build that wall up? You have to distinguish between the clean and the unclean. Unclean. Clean. Make that distinction. You cannot let the sewers of Hollywood and the sewers of everything else flow through your mind and think, well, I'm okay with this. It doesn't bother my conscience. I can watch that movie. I can look at that pictures. It doesn't bother my conscience. Well, it's a total misunderstanding of what a conscience is and does. A conscience only sets off alarms according to the convictions that you have established. And if that doesn't bother your conscience because you haven't been in God's Word enough to establish your convictions. So you get in God's Word and you establish the convictions. Unclean, clean. God calls us to be holy. In fact, verse we looked at last week concerning immorality, 1 Timothy 4:7. In order to be holy, he says, this is what God wants, for you to be a holy person. And to do that, you got to decide, not according to how the culture pushes you, because I know what the culture is going to do, but according to God's Word, what's unclean and what's clean. And then next, for from within, out of people's hearts come evil thoughts, sexual immoralities, thefts, murders, adulteries, greed, evil actions, deceits, self-indulgence, envy, slander, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile a person. You've got to stop this where it needs to be stopped at your thoughts, what goes on in your mind. You don't even want to think about that. And we are a generation, more than any other, that's more concerned with outward appearance than what goes on inside our hearts. So you got to build that wall. Whatever it takes, how drastic you got to be, and if it ever comes close to you, you kill it. You don't play with it, you kill it. And then you decide, you make your mind, I want holiness. I'm called to be holy just as He's holy. That's unclean. This is clean. And I'm not even going to let those thoughts come through my mind. You don't want to go there in our culture today? And we'll talk about another part next week in this that needs to take place. But you don't want to go there? The only way you're going to go there is to build that wall and make that determination. Whenever that gets close to you, you don't play with it. That's what Timothy wanted to do. Let's play with the bears. Let's just be their friend. No, you don't play with that. It's out to kill you. It comes toward you. You put it down. And our whole culture today is saying, come over here. It's so nice. Just play with this. Just get involved with this. And it takes us to this edge, and people are dropping like flies. And if you don't think that's not in our churches, you don't sit where I sit. You don't have to listen to the stories I listen to. So, what Paul was doing is often what he's not doing what we often do whenever we have situations like this. We want to talk, look how bad it is in the culture. But what Paul's doing, he's talking to the church. And what I'm telling you today is that if we're going to see God move in us, we got to get clean inside the church. We don't have any moral ground to stand on and start talking about the morality that's going on in the world. We got to clean up what's going on in the church, in us. In us. So, do you want God to do a work in you? Are you flirting with it? Read this little thing here or watch this little thing here and just sort of flirting with it? Parents, don't let your kids go there. Don't do it. Because where culture wants to take them is to mess them up in so many ways. And it will. It will. And single guys, I don't know where you're at. But if you will decide right now to build a wall in your life, that will be a rare thing in our culture, but you will not regret it. If you will become that the person you're looking for is looking for, someone who honors women as a fellow heir of Christ and doesn't treat them like a piece of meat, you will not regret it. So we're going to have a time of invitation today. And if you're there where you need to come back from, you just might want to come down and kneel and pray and ask God to take you back where you need to be and to build that wall. You may want to come and give your life to Christ because you realize, man, you're messed up and you need to see a change in your life and you need God to come in and change you and become a Christ follower today. I don't know how God may be speaking to you this morning, but I pray if you need to respond, that you will do so. Let's stand together.